I can't hear anything.
There we go. Now can you hear me? Forgot to unmute myself. So,
Yay!
all right. Good evening, everyone. I think we're about ready to get started. A lot of good camaraderie going on in here. All right. Well, I am your teacher tonight. So we're going to be talking about soil management in residential landscapes. And this is a little bit different than what Hebron taught. And he taught us about the basics of soil and the patterns of soil types and parent soil across Tennessee. So we're going to look at some of the focus on urban soils and some of the things that we deal with in our landscapes and the urban plantings, tree plantings, and things like that. So no further ado. How does soil fill the role that plants need? Of course, it provides physical support. It holds it down. And most trees, I don't know, but Katie mentioned this last week, but most trees don't have a large tap root. The feeder roots are the more important. So you need to protect your root system on your trees, when you're doing any digging or anything like that. So the root system does provide physical support. It holds water for plant uptake, holds nutrients, maintains the air near the roots for respiration. And it does break down and release plant nutrients. Of course, we have our microorganisms, our little critters in the soil that help do that. And it also cycles nutrients. So those are some of the things we're going to go through tonight. So our learning objectives are, one, to understand the soil functions and how they can be indicators of soil quality. Become familiar with soil attributes that can be improved with organic matter. Contrast methods of adding organic matter or altering the soil. Explain how to take a soil sample and interpret a soil report. I forgot to mention there are handouts over there, a sample soil report. And for those of you on Zoom, I did upload that soil report to the Google Drive. So if you want to look at that when we get to that part. So we're going to look at different types of fertilizer materials, their benefits, their limitations, and then describe some of the common soil organisms and what supports them. So overall soil quality, managing soil physical properties, chemical properties, and biological properties. So what is soil quality? Based on NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service, defines soil quality as one that will support biological diversity, supports many different plant types. So you have diversity in your landscape. It helps to regulate the flow of water, serves as a filter, a buffer, and degradation location. Serves as both a reservoir and a cycling area for nutrients, and it also provides support and physical stability for plants. Sorry, I'm tripping over my tongue tonight, it sounds like. So this table just kind of is an abbreviated version of the NRCS soil quality indicator sheet. And so when we look at the soil quality indicator, like water holding capacity, is going to increase your diversity and your biologicals that are in the soil. It's also going to help with water and solute flow as well as nutrient cycling. The soil indicator, you look at the bulk density of the soil. That also relates to diversity, water, nutrient, and carbon cycling, and stability and source of physical support. Earthworms present, helps in all categories. Water infiltration. We have, the water flow and solute flow. Filtering, buffering, degradation. Organic matter helps with all these things. And then your soil structure is going to be based on all these things. I actually ran into a professor, who was it? A couple weeks ago. Have you heard the word tilt? Soil tilt? Yeah. Okay. Who can tell me what soil tilt is? Well, yeah, you can work it.
Down.
Well, what?
Are you saying till or tilt?
Tilt, T-I-L-T-H-E.
Oh, I thought you
Tilt.
said tilt. She sounds like
Oh.
she's saying.
Okay,
Which is
tilt,
different.
soil tilt. Okay, basically that means that it's a good fertile soil. You can put your hands in it and do like this, and you have a nice consistent soil. It'll be a dark color because it's got good organic matter content to it, and it's ready to till. So we look at those things. So if a field is wet or your garden is wet, you never want to till it because you're not going to have good till after that. So a good till means the soil is workable, it's got good organic matter, microorganisms, and things like that in it. That's the word of the day, I guess. So, but we've talked about this a little bit. I'm gonna skip on. Okay, so soil structure and water, the impacts when we look at aeration, your aeration is going to be different with the different soil types. So we've got angular and subangular blocky soil, and that's just your soil particles. Okay, that looks like pretty heavy clay. So this would be a very fine soil, fine to medium, and this would be medium to coarse. So but your soil type does affect your aeration, infiltration or runoff, the water movement, water holding capacity, and the soil biology. Now, most of us in Tennessee live with the clay, hard clay soil, or a hard, churty soil. That's what I have out at my place, where you can't put a shovel into the ground, so there's just nothing's going to grow there. So I've just made it a wildlife habitat.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
We've been bugging me since Friday.
No.
With the Appalachian and everything. that's going on.
Yes, okay.
So much water came down from the mountain. Is that because of the drought and the water's not soaked?
A lot of it was runoff, a lot of it was the dams failing,
Right?
and just the power of water, because that storm, we were in the eye of the hurricane.
Right.
I've been calling it the hurricane that climbed the mountain, because that's kind of what it seemed like
Yeah.
happened when you look at it. But if you watch the past radar, I mean, we were in the eye of it too, but we didn't get the amount of rain that they got there, and I guess because it's closer to the East Coast too.
Right.
But it was like a cyclone type storm once it hit land. And so they just got more rain, and there was nowhere for it to go. The ground was hard, erosion, things like that. But a lot of it was compromised dams. I do believe that caused most of the problems. They just had too much water.
Yeah.
And I have been posting on Facebook. If anybody wants to help in any way, they are kind of putting together some things now that they've had some time to analyze the damage and such, and they need like places to house animals. Farmers have lost complete farms, and the animals, that didn't get washed away, unfortunately, now don't have a barn, or they don't have pasture, things like that. So they're actually looking for people to house animals. If you want to donate money to where they can go out and buy feed or buy hay, or if you're a farmer or know a farmer that wants to donate hay bales, or something like that, please let me know, and I'll get them signed up, or show them how to sign up to help out there. So we haven't sat down and talked as an extension office as to what we want to do. So that's been my way of going about it, is kind of Facebooking the stuff I'm getting from my colleague in Greene County, Tennessee. So if anybody wants to help with that, just give me a holler and let me know. So. Okay. All right, so here is a closer look at the soil sections. Okay, from right to left. Okay, this looks like a really good soil. Okay, and this one's not too bad. And you can see how the roots come down, and you can see little roots right down here. So that, is probably a 1 foot section. They probably pulled out that section. So this has got a lot of organic matter. It's darker in color. Like I said, you can see the roots down here. this isn't too bad, but this would be more of a sandy loam type soil. And the roots are still getting through, but they may not be getting the nutrients they need. And then this here is a really compacted soil. And you can see, the roots from these plants here only go to about right here. And then it's compacted and the roots just can't get through. So that's why sometimes you will have an area in your lawn that just dries out, you know? It can't build up a deep root system, and so it just stops. And then when you get to a drought situation like we had this summer, your lawn starts to die, or your trees, shrubs start to die. And that would be kind of like hitting a hard pan, is what we call it. So this is pretty much the best soil that would have good tilt. to it.
So tilling that person that you were describing would not help.
This one I would not want to till, especially when it's wet, because you can see it looks like it's got a high clay content. So you definitely don't want to till it while it's wet, but you could lightly till and work in. The recommendation is usually 3 inches of organic matter, for, how many ever thousand, like per 1,000 square foot. They have to measure out your area, put your organic matter down, and then till that in about 6 inches deep. You want to try to stay away from tilling, but I know initially you need to break the ground. So when you break the ground, you're adding the organic matter and doing good, but you're also bringing up weed seeds that've been there for a long time. And so with, like some of the flood areas and with the winds from the hurricane, we're probably gonna have some different weeds this year, or weeds that we haven't seen in a while, because now they've been washed to the surface. And also the fungal organisms that come with hurricanes, they come all the way to Tennessee up into Canada. That new strawberry disease that's going around, started in the Florida Caribbean area with strawberry growers down there. And so now, you can probably expect to pay a pretty penny next spring for strawberries, because all the plants from the East Coast are infected with it. And one of our growers decided not to grow at all. And some of them that are growing, it's a very strict spray schedule with fungicides. So your berries are going to cost more because the farmer's having to put more inputs into it. So
Everything's gonna cost more.
everything's going to cost more. Yeah. Well, yeah, especially things that normally grew.
Keep on by.
Yeah.
When you do aeration, like the rollers and stuff, is that gonna do anything?
I like to use a core aerator. The core aerator is not like the one that just spikes.
Right.
The spiky ones
Pull out
actually,
plugs.
yeah, the core aerator will go down, pull out a plug, throw it off to the side. So that is good. And then you can go across your lawn or whatever with some organic matter, good potting soil, peat, hemp, what is it? Okay. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So this is an example of how healthy soils, how the water will infiltrate very easily through the pores. Now, see, these were the aggregates that we would be talking about earlier in describing your soil characteristics. So you've got kind of loose aggregates. The water went very easily through there. Want to watch it again? This is cool. All right. So this is what we want, is a soil, that it allows that water to infiltrate down to the root system. When you're watering your plants, we sometimes will say 1.5 to 2 inches of water a week. Well, how do you get that much? What I tell people is to, like, if you got an irrigation system, or even if you're watering by hand, dig down after you've watered for a little while, take a spade or a shovel and just dig down next to your plants and make sure that the soil has been wetted down 6 to 8 inches, because that's where the root system is, and that's the part that needs to be wet. Now, if you just go out there and you give them a little sprinkle baptism every day, that doesn't work very well, because then they get spoiled and you go on vacation, and what happens when you come back from vacation? And you haven't been sprinkle baptizing every day. So you're better off to do a good thorough watering once a week or twice a week during, the hot, dry periods. So, okay, so the water here is moving through the pore space of the soil, and the soil is of course made up of sand, silt, and clay. Compaction. Most of our residential areas, the new development, they take down all the trees, they scrape off the soil, and then they run their heavy equipment over it, and they build your house, and they bury the debris and put sod over it, and then you buy the house, and then it's all your problem now. Unfortunately, some of those practices need to be changed, but we're working on it. So with the construction equipment, working the soil to the same depth every year creates a hard pan. So a lot of your farmers that till every year and plant, like row crops or tobacco, they're tilling 6 to 8 inches every year. And so it develops a hard pan about 6 to 8 inches down. So sometimes you have to take a tool, it's called a ripper, and you hook that up to your tractor, and it digs down a little deeper, and it rips through that soil and rips through the hard pan. So that's what we would do, on a commercial level. Other ways you can help with compaction is, like we mentioned, with the core aerator. Do a core aeration and then go back over and put your peat or other organic matter down all over your yard. You have to do that a couple times a year, because our heat, the organic matter, is going to break down very quickly. So you have to continually add it. So, okay, and do not work soil when it is wet. So you can see if you did till, this is going to develop a crust along the top, and then you put your seeds in the ground, and they have to work really hard to try to get up through that crust that forms on top of the soil. Besides that, it makes your aggregates very blocky. So you have air pockets down in there. So you don't want to have this subsoil compaction. So as you can see, the roots can only make it to about this level. So if you've got a more porous soil, filtering the crumbs and the little blocks, that is much better, because you can see how the root system is really going down in the short here because of that hard pan. So if you're having problems in your lawn, landscape, the soil compaction can be a real issue.
Does that go for the same for like building a perennial garden?
Same
With
thing is,
adding-
yeah, you got to kind of do the, the soil test, just dig, or the drainage test, where you dig a hole foot deep, foot wide, put water in it, let it fill up, and see how long it takes it to drain. If that hole still has water in it 24 hours later, you got a drainage problem. It should drain between 4 to 6 hours, and then you've got a well-drained soil. And if it drains quicker than that, you've got a very well-drained soil, and you still may need to add organic matter, so it will be able to hold in some of that water, and it doesn't all wash away. Okay, now here is what it looks like when it rains on a compacted soil. Tossing it up. So it has a hard time breaking through and getting through these aggregates that are so tightly compacted, and so you just don't get the water infiltration like you need. So, and then what happens? It runs off. You have erosion. Okay, so what is our impact on the soil? Removing the topsoil, compaction, like I said, from building, which increases erosion. Over-tilling an area will also increase the erosion problem. We tend to reduce the amount of organic matter, because when we build, we're scraping off the topsoil, the good part. That leads to soil pollution, and then reduced infiltration, which is runoff or erosion. So if you think your site is not ideal, what's the first thing you're going to do? Soil test. Okay. All right. So again, it may not, may not be all about the nutrients themselves. It may be the actual, the plant being able to build its roots downward. You don't want them to come upward. And then site management, the surface cover to reduce erosion. You can plant cover crops. We're going to go over that in a little bit. Amend the soil, make sure it's the right pH range for the plant that you're wanting to grow. Our soil test will tell you what nutrients are available. And you can also do raised beds, containers, which are usually filled with a soilless mix, like a Pro Mix or just a good potting soil. I love Pro Mix with mycorrhiza in it. It makes your plants so happy. And I like happy plants. So I put that in my garden as I'm planting, and I'll just amend everywhere. Well, I did before I moved to the land of clay. So, all right, so we've got your soil profile. Did everybody get a copy of that when they come in? There's a handout on the table up here if you want to go grab one. Now, when I first looked at this, I was thinking it was from my house, my farm, but it's not. This is, in May of 2021. So this is actually from the Jubilee Garden, which is a combination of, well, at this time it was more soil. They have gone to more of a soilless mix in their beds now. So this is done with pretty much soil. So first of all, we're going to look at soil pH. I guess I should put something. Okay, so when you're looking at your paper here,
Hey, I just recently got a soil thing back from the co-op. Should I get that and read along?
yeah, the co-ops, they use Waypoint Labs, and
Oh.
they're a little bit more difficult for me to comprehend.
Oh.
Anyway. So, but yeah, we can compare them.
Okay.
I am so used to our lab reports, the university, because one thing we're not trying to sell fertilizer, so we can on it. So, but anyway, so if you look at this one, our soil pH is a 7.12. Okay, so is that alkaline or acid? Alkaline. Okay, it's about at the neutral point. If you look at your scale, your pH, anything above 7 would be alkaline or sweet soil. Anything down below, you're heading into the acidic soil. Now, if you look across here, it says phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, zinc, boron, manganese, iron, then boron, and sodium. So you have all those components in your soil, and then right below it, it tells you, like under potassium, it says 24 M. That M means that you have a medium amount, but you still need a little bit of potassium, but you don't need a lot. It's not low. If it has an H behind it, like the potassium on this one, it was very high. Well, it was high. Calcium was sufficient. There's an S there, and then magnesiums, everything else, it looks like it was satisfactory. So we're not going to need lime for sure. Okay, so if you go to the next page or on the back of there, you're going to see we tested for a vegetable garden, shrubs, acid loving, home strawberries, and then home raspberries. Because when you send in your soil sample, remember when you fill out that form, you pick 4 crops, okay, from that one sample. Okay, so it's calling for no lime, no lime at all. Go ahead and flip to the next page. This is what gets people confused. It's a little bit too many details. Okay, so, but it also tells you, you just got to read through it one sentence at a time, and I go through it and highlight it. So, and I pick the easiest fertilizer that I can get my hands on too. A 10-10-10, you can figure out your ratios and how much you need to apply a lot easier than doing the mathematics anyway. Than a 15-15-15 or something like that. So this says, broadcast 5 pounds of a 27 to 33% nitrogen fertilizer, or 15 pounds of blood meal, or 8 pound. Read the glasses. 8 to 12% nitrogen fertilizer per 1,000 square feet. If the soil is less than 6.1, then apply lime at the rate given. And that would be down further. Phosphorus is medium, so you use a 0.75 pounds of PTO5. That's what we call potassium. That is the form that it's readily available to the plant, and it can take it in. So bone meal is a good substitute for nitrogen. If you're going to stay kind of on the organic side rather than using the synthetic fertilizers that are full of salts and such, you might want to go with the organic choices. So that is at planting. It tells you exactly what to put in your soil. And then mid-season, it's going to give you, the rates are given in pounds per 1,000 square feet, or they might say per 100 feet row. Okay, so like tomatoes and peppers. When fruits are 1 inch or more in diameter, apply either a 1/2 pound of a 2700, 3400, or similar fertilizer, or 2 pounds of blood meal. So you're just making a choice on whether you're using chemical or organic matters. For vine crops, pumpkin, squash, watermelon, when the vines are 1 foot long, apply 1/2 pound of 2700 or 3400. So you just gotta carefully read through these recommendations, and it tells you exactly what you need to know. Okay, and so you're gonna be, you want to use the home and garden sheet rather than a field test, because a field test is more on a farmer level. It's the recommendations are going to come back per acre, and we want per 1,000 square foot or per 10-foot row or 100-foot row. So it comes back in quantities that are for homeowners. So then on the acid loving shrubs, this one gets hard. I always have to put it through there's calculators online. Because this gets confusing to me. For acid loving shrubs, since our pH was 7.1, for 100 square feet of the bed, broadcast evenly over mulch, or you can do it under the mulch on the ground, 1/2 pound of 040 superphosphate or similar equivalent, plus 1/4 pound, 1/2 cup of 4000 sulfur coated urea, nitroform, urea, and other slow release nitrogen fertilizers. That's going to bring your pH down for you, especially the fertilizer. So, and then it tells you, and then in mid-May, late June, you're going to broadcast a 1266 or equivalent for an acid forming fertilizer. So you're really fixing it for the next year. Like if somebody comes in and they're wanting to plant blueberries, especially, which is a high dollar crop, and plants cost money. So, you really want to make sure that you get your soil in the right range. So you may have to soil test a couple different times, adding the amendments, trying to get it down to 4.8 to 5.5 for blueberries and acid loving plants. So, yeah, it just takes time. And even if you need a lot of lime for your garden, sometimes it'll come out, 2 tons usually 2 tons per acre or something like that. But you break it down into 2 applications, do one in the fall and one in the spring, because it takes a long time for, again, that chemistry to work in the soil and to change the pH. And you want to do that before you plant, especially if it's like a permanent type thing. Vegetable garden, you can kind of till it up and amend it every year. But with like an acid loving plant, you want to test that soil probably every year until you get it right. And then Then you can kind of break it down and start going every 3 years, every 5 years in between soil testing. You can do it potted container. I mean, it's gonna stay in there for a while, depending on what you plant. And how big it's gonna get. You may have to change container sizes. Mhm. You may need to. Yeah. 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 And also, since you brought that up, if you're planting in pots, you're probably not using soil out of the ground. You're using media, a soilless plant mix, like the Pro Mix or Miragrow, whatever variety you want to get there, or what brand you want to get. So you need to do a media test, which they have to take a gallon of your soil. You send that off to the lab and have a media test run on it, and they'll tell you what the nutrient content is. So it's a separate test from a soil test. So if you're in garden, we'll be sending this off with soil that you've gathered from your garden. If you've got raised beds that just have media in it, you have to have a media test, which is it. So this soil test would be $25 sent in from our office. The media test would be $45, I believe. Because it's $35 at the lab and it takes about $10 to ship it for. Sometimes they do, but a lot of times people will make their own. You know, they'll come up with their own paralyzed yeast and vermiculites. They'll mix their own up and they'll send it off to the test. And you know, sometimes the bags may lie to you. So if you're having problems with your plants, it's a good idea to get a media test and see what exactly your nutrients are. Okay. Yeah. If they are really probably, I would still have a soil test done because, like if it's the turf, on turf grass, they'll give you a high maintenance level, medium, and low. And then it'll tell you how to fertilize and the amount of times you fertilize per year. So on low maintenance, you'd be fertilizing like twice a year, once in the spring, once in the fall. High maintenance, like golf course, they're going to be really only need to fertilize 4 times a year, but people tend to do more than that sometimes. So yeah.
I have a question.
Okay.
The media test and the soil test are different. So, my understanding is like the media test tests the nutrients from that are in the soil, and the soil test it tests the water from.
They both are looking for nutrients. Yeah, they're both going to tell you the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and all these little micronutrients that are listed.
Right.
So both of them are testing for nutrient quality.
Okay. So if I was picking one or the other, is when I do a media test, I have a larger area, and the media test is for like bags.
Yeah, for bagged soil. That's what a media is that's the bagged soil. Yeah, it didn't come out of the ground. Well, it did. It came from a peat moss bog up north. So that's the difference there. Okay. Yeah, one is a media test and the other is an actual soil test, soil gathered from the ground. So, all right. How do we manage some of the soil properties? Well, I think we come back to a little bit of this in a minute. So my favorite way of amending the soil is to grow cover crop. And I have yet to get my cover crop out for this year. So you're not too late. You got till October 15th is usually the cutoff. And I use a mix of wheat, cereal rye, oats, put turnips in it, the daikon radishes, anything that can grow down and will live through the winter. and break up that soil is really good for your soil. And so you can eat these things too. So if you plant mustard greens or turnip greens and turnips, you can eat those until you're tired of them, and then just break them. They break down in the soil and they build up that organic matter and make your soil structure better. So there
I
are
do have a
spring-
question. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
ma'am.
I have a quick question. So when you're doing the cover crops, like for
Mhm.
example, let's say my backyard, I want to just do cover crops all over like the grass. Well, I can just spread different seeds all at once, or do I have to
Um,
section it off?
You would probably order a cover crop seed mix.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, there's several places. I think Stephen Smith recommended several places where you can get cover crop seed. Roundstone up in Kentucky is one of the closest areas to get them.
Mhm.
But there's a place in Pennsylvania. There's several places online. Baker Seed, you can get the mixes. But I know our local co-op is not very good about making the mixes and having that ready for you.
Yeah.
You have to buy the separate ingredients and kind of
Yeah.
put them together and then plant them, put the seed all out at one time though.
Okay.
But you don't have to till for most of these cover crops to take
Mhm.
root. I would mow or bush hog down, as close as you can, and hopefully right before rain, get that cover crop seed put out there, and then it'll start coming up in a couple months, and it'll live through the winter time and
Uh-huh.
spring. It'll really jump to life. Red crimson clover is one of my favorites too that I add because it's so pretty in the spring. But I mix like 3 different types of clover together, and I don't care if my front yard is all clover. It would be better than what is there now. Yeah. So, but yeah, right now would be the time to do the fall cover crops,
Okay.
and then in spring there are some spring cover crops. So
All right. And then is there the place that you mentioned in Kentucky? I can order from them and they'll ship it to my house, or
yeah,
is there? Okay.
yeah, yes, yes. So that was roundstone seed, and I'll see if I can find the names of some others. But you just
Okay.
don't find them local. I always end up Johnny's seed. I think I ordered mine from Baker Creek, but I've ordered it individually and then I mixed them together.
Okay.
In a bag, I mixed them together. So,
Thank you.
so cover crops and green manures. The manure, you're just basically you're letting that grow throughout the season, like our winter to spring, and then you can lightly till that in or mow it. Larger farmers will crimp it down, just to lay it down so they can plant their economic value crop in there, right in the seed bed. I like using wheat and rye because you can just take it and kind of roll over it, and it'll make your own mulch. It makes its own hay, basically, or straw, really, not hay, just more straw. Once it dries out. So
How about, with my garden beds, the leaves are just falling off the tree.
mhm.
Oh. I don't have to work.
Yeah,
So I'm
use
thinking,
that as a mulch, yeah.
but with the rain and everything, isn't the leaves and stuff, won't they get disease? And then,
Well, if you know that if your trees had disease, I would probably
no.
rake,
they're pretty-
they're good, then I'd just let them decompose. Yeah,
And then
Yeah.
spring is,
If you
Yeah.
chop them up with
Yeah,
a
chop 'em up.
blower, then they'll decompose without like
Mhm.
creating a layer that kills off vegetation.
yeah, that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, mow them up,
Yeah, no.
run them over.
Well, they're in raised
lawn.
beds. All in raised
Okay.
beds, so.
Is it where you can just take like a pitchfork or
Yeah,
tine and just turn them over?
yeah.
Just turn them over and they'll break down faster too. Yeah. So, okay, so compost is another method there. Soil conditioners, it's kind of like compost, but a little bit different. On our farms, they tend to use ditches or tile, and let's see, erosion and tillage. So our cover crops, our grasses, when you do a cover crop, especially in the fall, you also want to add a legume. So that would be like a winter pea or something in the bean family that will survive over the winter. So rye, wheat, barley, oats, plus some of these other things that I mentioned would be the fall cover crop. So like I said, they're easy to establish. They have a high biomass. You gotta be ready to mow it down in the spring or do something. Cause my idea, I got one of those just the push mowers with the rotary thing on it. And my idea was I was just gonna push down those cover crops. Didn't work out that way. I ended up going through it with the lawnmower, which I really didn't want to do, but it did the same effect. So and they kept growing back and coming back. So, but it is improving my soil. So you will have a lot of biomass, cut them early. But they do have a slower breakdown. They do prevent erosion. So we don't want to leave our soil bare. Is kind of the bottom line here. And they often outcompete weeds. So, you know, like the roots on these crops, as well as turnips or other root crops, are gonna improve that soil structure. They will, let's see. I'm just looking at my notes here. No, I haven't mentioned, okay, add a legume. Okay, cover crops, legumes. So crimson clover, hairy vetch, field pea. Hairy vetch can get a little bit out of control, but you can bale it up for hay. So if you're baling it, you know, if you're using your cover crop, you can go ahead and bale it up for hay. Because it's got the wheat, the rye, the grasses in it, and it also has a legume. So you can use it, let it break. You can either cut it and let it break down, or you could bale it as hay if you've got cattle or other animals too. Well, we did learn a lesson at the Kleeman Garden. That's our 4-H garden. You don't want to plant wheat and raised beds. It's terrible to get out. Because we were waiting and waiting because we wanted to show the kids, you know, how to thresh wheat. And so we had to wait till the kids got out of school and were doing their summer program. And so our wheat stayed there for a long time. And so it had a root system about this deep. And so we were constantly, every week, our job was to go out there and till that wheat under, and we even started a little compost bed with it. But we did thresh the wheat with the kids. They had a blast. We got the seeds off, they put them in a pillowcase, and they went up to the building and they smacked it. There was threshing the wheat, and then we had them separate the actual wheat seed, you know, from the debris that goes with it. And we gave them what was it, a coffee grinder, some other kind of little grinder, and I gave him well, he had a pestle, you know, we do like that. I had a rock. I had a rock that had a hole. It looked like that's what it had been used for, because I got it down at the creek. So I found 2 rocks, and so we had them out there. It's hard to thresh and crush wheat seeds. It is, but they were a little bit old. But the kids got the idea, you know. And then they did make a little bit of flour. So we explained to them that's how flour, you know, that's where flour comes from, you know, from wheat and stuff. So we could do that with adults.
So in the raised beds, not wheat, but crimson clover, always good for the soil.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, but it's going to be hard in your beds. You want an annual in the beds.
They,
Mm. They need to be like winter peas or something like that. Whole beans. The free,
beans, I mean.
yeah, we'll get a freeze before they'll make beans. But you can still just let them lay and rot in the soil or turn them under, because we'll get a freeze and then it'll warm up again. But yeah, but a winter pea, it will last through the winter months. It's cold hardy. Okay, so let me see. Okay, spring cover crops. Buckwheat is one of my favorite ones. And normally what you buy at co-op is just a white buckwheat. You can also get red and pink. And so when I had my farm out off of Lockby Road, I had some sections that were white and pink and white and pink and red. It was really pretty, but we were having trouble getting grass established. And so, but the buckwheat works well for pollinators. If you've got bees, it adds phosphorus naturally. It's about one of the only ones that will add phosphorus to your soil. And again, you got to let it fall and go into the earth and compost basically. But the seeds, you can actually eat the seeds off buckwheat. You can make a flour out of it. I liked picking them and just eating them. I'll be out in the yard and have some spinach here and have some buckwheat here and just go out and forage. But they are good for that, and they do reseed themselves. Like if you plant it in April, it'll get about this tall and it'll go to seed and it'll start to die off. But if you just go through and like I said, I like to walk through and just pull those seeds off and drop them back down on the soil and they'll come up. And I've got buckwheat this year that was from last year's planting that came up this year. So they are an annual, but they can overwinter and come back. So come back from seed. It can be, but they're very easy to control with mowing. Frequent mowing, you'll get rid of them. So yeah, keep them short. Okay, so buckwheat is an annual. Summer annual, it's a non-legume, but it is a good weed suppressor and pollinator supporter. It has fast germination. When we built, I should have put pictures in here. When we built the house out on Lockby Road, it was July when they finished, and the insurance adjusters were wanting us to have grass. And so I tried talking to them, and I said, you can't plant fescue in August, and I didn't want to put annual rye out or any kind of rye and get that started. So I planted probably an acre of buckwheat. Well, they came out and tried to tell me that was not acceptable, that they were not going to give us clearance to move into our house. So I had to put on my extension hat and have a talk with them and show them that this is used for erosion control. This is the time of year to plant it and things like that. So yeah, they tried to make a fuss over us actually moving in over my buckwheat. So mad. Okay, so brassicas like mustards and radish. Mustards, you've all heard of mustard gas. That is actually a way to well, like the farmers when they do the I'm at a loss for words tonight for some reason. The mustards or mustard gas you can buy and like you put under the plastic culture strawberries, fumigate the soil. So there is a mustard gas that you can buy that you incorporate into the soil, but you want to get it covered with plastic as soon as possible. So a story on this, one of our farmers decided to do this, and I don't know quite why, but he decided to pull a soil test afterwards. And I come into my office and there's this bag of soil, and the bag is puffed up like this. I'm like, what's going on? Yeah, I called Rusty Evans, used to work out here. I'm like, Rusty, who brought this? And he said so-and-so. And I said, okay. A farmer that tried to kill me. No, but actually my coworker ended up taking it outside and just tossing it because we figured out what it was. Once I knew who the farmer was, I knew what he'd been doing. And I don't know why he wanted that soil tested with that stuff in it, but I called him up and I said, you could have killed me. If I would have opened that bag, mustard gas. I said, don't you ever do that again. So even if I had to stand up on a stool, looking in the eye, I still, yeah. So be careful about them. But mustards naturally have characteristics naturally in their DNA to help with pre-emergent weeds. So like instead of using a chemical, you can do mustards, but you have to till them in. And of course, the radishes, as I said earlier, are just good for getting down through that soil. And then, when they die off with a good hard freeze, you can look at them and you can just see the mass of good composted soil, or what's turning into soil compost in your garden. Stinks for a couple of days, but it does a good job of amending the soil. So again, there'll be a high biomass, nutrient scavenging. They will, they do take up some nutrients, but they're gonna be adding nutrients as well. Um, other benefits. Other benefits of organic matter, we're gonna talk about the biological communities. Okay, and not just for vegetable gardens. Think about site preparation. If you've moved into a new house or you've got a new area, think about your landscape and give it a couple years before you plant your permanent plants. I did a garden in front of the house and amended the soil for about 3 years before I went ahead and started incorporating my shrubs and trees and perennials into the landscape at the house. Because all my soil rolled downhill because it rained in July. So, so think site preparation, whether it's landscape or vegetable garden, you need to make a little assessment.
For gardens, like that, garden, or for anything.
Yeah, anything that you are soil testing. No. Yes, you can put them out for vegetable gardens, or like I said, if you don't have a lawn, like we did that year and we needed to wait until fall to really plant the grass. I had turnips growing in with the buckwheat and all kinds of stuff. So it was just the whole lawn. And then we just cut it down and then planted grass seed, which didn't grow very well. So next year we brought up the buckwheat again in those bare areas. That's how I ended up with little slices of buckwheat here and there, the strips. It was really pretty. So, but yes, anything you're going to plant, you need to do a soil test and incorporate some type of organic matter. So what are the drawbacks? Timing. I don't know where this year has gone. It's October 1st. I mean, and your cover crop seeds need to be out by October 15th. And a lot of your cool season plants, you can plant radishes, spinach, collards, greens, turnip greens, turnips, things like that. You can plant those now and they'll be okay. But your warm season crops are not going to have time to actually, make fruit, but you can, like I said, till them in. So timing can be a drawback. Equipment. The equipment needed, if you have a large space and you need to either cut or crimp that cover crop back, you got to come up with different ways to go about it. I mean, I used to fill a 50 gallon drum with halfway with water, and I would roll that over my cover crops. It's good exercise. I'm getting too old for all that stuff now. It hurts. So, and rotation of your crops. If you've had diseases this year, especially like in your tomatoes and peppers, those are in the Solanaceae family, along with potatoes. Rotate your crops next year, because we've got a lot of new fungal organisms that came up with the hurricane, and then now we got another coming. So rotating your crops is very important. You just want to look at the plant families and make sure that you're moving plant families around in the garden or in the raised beds, where you grew tomatoes and peppers last year, plant something different in a different family in that bed. So does that make sense? So
Well, if you planted 27 plants in every bed, it's kind of hard. Tomatoes. But if you,
yeah,
what if I planted,
depends on the size of your bed.
yeah, they're pretty.
Oh,
big,
okay.
but if I put them in a different area, at this end, it's the same end every one,
Oh, okay.
right?
So you've just got one bed you can't really rotate from
Well,
one.
if I only put tomatoes on this end,
Mhm.
then next year put them on this.
You have to put them on that end. Yeah. So you may still have some of the diseases. I mean, a lot of these fungal diseases get down in the soil and they overwinter there. And we've got a picture coming up here of southern blight. So if you've had something like that in your garden, you got to plant something else besides tomatoes, peppers, those Solanaceae crops. You would not be able just to move them from one end to the other, because that fungi would work its way through the soil. And once you get a plant that's susceptible there, then it's going to get a disease. So, okay. So rotate your crops. Manure crops or manures. It does add organic matter and provide some nutrients, mostly nitrogen. So if you put it on fresh, which we don't recommend, because it can be hot and it's high in nitrogen, and then it will just burn up your plants. Your tomatoes and peppers will start turning yellow. So you need to let your compost break down, or manures, let them break down 6 months to a year is the organic standard. And you need to get that up to maintain at least 130 degrees or above to make sure that it's composting completely. And that gets rid of your fungal organisms, your weed seeds and things like that. But if you're big into composting, you want to just get a thermometer that you can stick down in there and make sure that it's staying hot. So then you've got to wash your browns to greens ratio, add some greens to it, and that'll kind of, or add some nitrogen to it. You can even add nitrogen or bone meal, and that will help heat it up and break down faster. So with our manures, I think we may have talked about this in one other class, but the food safety risk near vegetables we don't want to do, like I said, the raw, even manure teas. A lot of people will use the manure teas, put them in a bucket, and then run that water down the rows. That's really not recommended, especially on leafy greens and things like that, or root crops. It doesn't pose as big of a risk to tomatoes, corn, things like that are pretty much what you harvest is way above the ground. But you've got to remember, when you get rain or you're watering, you're splashing soil up onto the plants. So you can be spreading diseases by the way you water. So again, you want to make sure that composting was hot enough. I don't know what that means, composition. So immobilization, lots of straw added. Whoop, sorry. No, that was pretty much. But the other thing is even when you're composting, the chemicals do not break down. So if you've got heavy metals, or you've got pesticide residues, or those forever chemicals in your soil, composting will not break that down. It just will not. So you've got to make sure that you talk to whoever you're getting your manure from. You're getting it from the farmer down the road. If he's treated his pasture with like gramoxone, the cow eats the grass, cow poops the manure, you put that in your garden, it's still going to have that residual of gramoxone in there, and it will kill your vegetable garden. It will. So we've got to be careful as these chemicals change and farmers start to use different chemicals. We've got to make sure you check into it when you get your manures. I had another home visit been several years ago. I haven't gone back to check on him, but he decided to use gramoxone, which is a pasture broadleaf weed control, and he decided to use it on his lawn. And then his wife went behind him with a strong bout of Roundup, and everything on his property was dying. I mean, it just made me want to cry. And then he got mad at me because then he figured out he did it. And I said, you got to read that label. Read those labels.
Sorry, tea from marijuana plants. I know marijuana is illegal here, but in Maine it's legal.
Yeah.
Then I would put compost tea on the garden bed.
Yeah, you could do the same thing with hemp. I mean, if you have a hemp farmer that wants to get rid of their residue, get rid of their clippings and such, like we're growing CBD hemp.
They do that here?
Yeah. It's gone down since about 2019. The government has about regulated it out of business. So anyway, okay. So really your non-manure compost may be the best, or use your living crops like we've talked about with cover cropping. Okay, the compost, the controlled breakdown depends on the composition. Like if you're getting tree clippings and things like that, the chips, it's going to take a lot longer for that to break down than maybe just grass. Okay, sufficient temperature. Like I said, it needs to be above 130 degrees and turn it often to get it to break down faster. And it also has to have a good balance of oxygen and water. You don't want it to be really wet, but it needs to be damp and have that right ratio of oxygen and water and greens to browns. So,
Carla, I have a question.
yes, yes.
So people that, I hear people that I'm composting, I'm doing my compost. They might get a big bucket from Lowe's and just start throwing banana peelings in there, tomatoes, all their food left over,
Yeah.
greens or lettuce or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think they know. You said compost supposed to get hot to a certain temperature before it's right to put in your garden. Are you saying that?
You have to, well, you can get different types of composters, like the tumblers, I think maybe what you're mentioning.
Or they just get a bucket, or
Or a bucket.
they
You
have
just
a little
to
thing in their
make sure that-
garden, in their
Yeah.
yard, where they have a little box and they just throw stuff in it,
Right,
in the yard. And then they
Yeah.
turn it over sometime, but
yeah.
I don't know, I didn't understand, I didn't know that it has to be a certain temperature to be ready to use.
Right, it has to get to a certain temperature so that it will start composting or breaking down. So,
Oh,
yeah, like I do, I keep a container under my kitchen sink that we put scraps in, organic
Oh.
scraps, everything but meats and fats and bones, stuff like that. But everything organic, and then
Okay.
I will take that out and, well, I did have a compost pile, but I'd put it on the compost pile and then keep that pile turned on a regular basis. So, and a lot of times what I would do in the summer months when it's really dry, it's kind of trick to watering your plants as well as composting. I call it composting as you go.
Mhm.
I will take those scraps and I will actually dig a little row, like if it's by my corn or tomatoes or whatever, and I'll dump that dump the compostable materials in there and then cover it back up with the soil, and it breaks down and it actually adds a little bit of water as it's breaking down. It seemed to really help my garden plants. So that's what I call composting.
Oh.
And like if
So,
I'm harvesting something, like leafy greens or whatever, and you're cutting the roots off or the
Mhm.
ones that have a spot on it or something, I just throw that back down in the garden. As long as it doesn't have a disease on it, I just throw it back in there and let it compost and break down. Because
so you don't have to wait till it gets hot, just throw your,
Right.
your waste over there, organic,
Right,
right?
right. There's different ways to go about it. If you're on a smaller scale, you can do like what I was saying, just compost as you go and compost as you harvest, things like that. So, yeah.
Okay, that's what my sister was doing. She's just, keeping stuff like you did in a bucket. She'd go out there and put it in her garden. And this year she grew some kind of thing that looked like a watermelon, but it wasn't, but it was yellow. I was like, what is that? She tasted it. I was
Was
like,
it
"Ugh."
a different type of melon or maybe a squash that
Yeah,
came
I
up?
don't know what it was. She didn't know what it was, but she cut it and she said it tastes pretty good. But I don't know what it was. I don't think I would have done that.
Volunteer.
Yeah, you get a lot of volunteers and in the squash, the cucurbits, when they cross, you don't see it till the next year when that seed starts to grow. So that's how we get new varieties. So, sometimes it's okay just to leave them and let them come back and see what you get. The gourds and pumpkins and things like that. So, but anyway, okay. So other soil conditioners, peat, perlite, vermiculite, and sand. They can be useful, but be aware of the cost and the volumes needed. So again, we can go from a small scale where it's not going to take very much at all, to a farmer's field, and he has to make that decision on what type of soil conditioners to use. So perlite helps to speed up the germination and the rooting. So if you're starting plants, you would use perlite or vermiculite. Either one is really good for starting plants. And then you transplant them into a potting mix and you keep putting them in different containers until you get ready to put them outside. But we'll kind of talk more about that next week. So, and then vermiculite is for water retention. It's also good for your new starts or if you're doing cuttings. You can put your cuttings in the vermiculite and let them root and then put them in their permanent pot or in the ground, whatever you can do with them. It's a type of soil conditioner. Vermiculite is the kind of gold looking stuff that you'll see in a bag like a potting mix that you buy at the store. It kind of a gold color, and the perlite is the little white balls of stuff.
So none of this is like organic.
Yeah. Yes, it's mined. Yes, both of those are mined, and the peat is mined. Yeah, so they're all organic. There's nothing synthetic in these things that we're talking about.
So
Okay.
maybe
So, let's see. The vermiculite has a good amount of magnesium in it, and is also good for, like I said, it adds some, add some minerals. Okay, my mouse won't go. Okay. And then the, if I had anything, perlite is yeah, it's just a mined rock. So, lightweight granular material, white in color, looks and feels like little bits of styrofoam kind of. It's actually made, oh, here's an interesting fact. I didn't read through the notes. The perlite is made from expanded volcanic glass heated to 1,000 degrees Celsius until it pops like popcorn. So that's how they get perlite. It's like popcorn. Perlite adds a little bit of magnesium, but it's more for helping the drainage and germination. Improves the aeration in your soil. Okay, are you guys ready for a break? Okay, we'll talk about, okay, let's take about a 10-minute break.
I see you holding this much.
Buckwheat doesn't get
What are you doing, Laura?
There is kind of a disclaimer up there that if you're doing business, you can put that you're a card in it, but if you're out there and you're being paid to work for someone, you cannot be advertised. It's but you put it on your resume. You know, not all that. But if I was to come to you, I will be there, I'll come to you, but here. Yeah. Right, it would be if you gotta separate yourself from MasterCard and the business person. Yeah. It depends what, if you're being paid for it, because it's okay for him to go with MasterCard. If you're just doing it as a volunteer, so you put it on a workshop, you're not collecting any money. It's when you be paid.
You know, they see it and do that.
You can always tell them about.
Yeah, you, they have.
Right, and so this is. Do this, right, so.
So I'm not gonna have it.
Yeah, it depends on, yeah, but it depends on, you know, like, you're talking to your neighbor, and you're just chit chatting. Hey, and they ask them.
Are you gonna zoom in?
You're gonna get a lot of.
Oh, I'm probably gonna start zooming in, like, you're gonna say that, and then the rest of them.
Yeah, I like to be.
Yeah.
I'm like, I think. We're not reading them out today, yeah, no, they're so big, you guys.
And I think that.
Not if I was regeneration. Working. I bet, that's probably certain that he is. I ain't trying to worry about that, so, but. Good exercises, training,
She appreciates like. But it's like also. Saturdays. Yeah. And I look at it, like, it should be contained. Yeah. But they made readers. But they run up with like. Yeah. Kind of like what. Right. You could work with mine.
I was just reading an article, lady is, she built a greenhouse around. And everything. But it's not a very big house. The greenhouse.
Well, you still love people, you're like a mom too. We have next to their house.
They did that back. When they do it in the winter time.
That's my push right now. We're getting more.
They just put 4
All righty.
Now it's all weeds.
Yeah.
All the compost.
Yeah, I will. We better get started. Okay, if you guys want to take your seats, let's go ahead and get started and maybe get to go home at a normal time. She was good. Yeah. All righty, so drainage in the real world, if you're looking at larger agriculture, like this would be your row crop system. Okay, they've got a low area there that's gonna flood. What they could do is install what you call tiles. Which are buried down in there, and they help the water to move a certain direction, drainage tiles. So they move that water out, and that area will dry out a little bit faster. So, because right now that corn cannot stay in that water for a long time, it will die. So too much water is a problem, too little water can be a problem. So, this garden here, the site had poor drainage when they started. And so they're working on amending the soils, but there's a hard pan under there. And so these plants start getting real stressed. You can see they're starting to turn yellow. They have a lot of tomatoes on them, but they don't have a lot of leaves. And so they're just not getting the water that they need. Probably don't have an irrigation system set up. You know, sometimes hand watering just doesn't work as well. You don't get them soaked down deep. But this is the kind of soil that you might have to go back and do some deep tilling or some deep ripping of the soil. Definitely we plant a cover crop, you know, and let it grow through the winter, break down and plant in the spring. Use that cover crop residue for your weed control in between. Just lay it over flat, plant your plants in there and go. Okay, this is what we mean by drainage tiles. They've been doing it for a long time. I guess it's probably done similar nowadays. This is 1904. Where they were putting in drainage tiles, basically just pieces of concrete. And so that's going to help the fields to drain better. So that's what we mean by drainage drainage tiles. I don't think my brain and my mouth are going to work together tonight. Okay, so the tiles, the drainage ditches, that just takes your surface water and diverts it. You try to keep it where it's not causing erosion, not causing a lot of runoff, but it will divert it to a stream or to another waterway where it can flow. So we have a thing called the saturation point. Once your soil gets saturated to a certain point, it can't hold any more water, and so then you get the runoff. And so like we were so dry, these first couple of rains that we've gotten, you know, they just didn't sit. They didn't settle into the soil. It just kind of ran off. And like I said, that's what's going on in the mountains too. You know, they just didn't have anywhere for the water to go. So, and they can be used to lower a high water table. If you look at your property on the USDA Web Soil Survey, it will typically tell you how far down the water table is on your property. So, or it will tell you where there's a hard pan, like it will say more than 80 inches, which is about 6 foot, or 6 foot deep before you're gonna hit a hard pan. Or maybe your water table may be 6, 7 foot down, it could be 30 foot down, it could be. But if you use that USDA Web Soil Survey, you just go in there and you put your address in, and you got to kind of play with it a little bit, because if you don't use it all the time, it can be confusing. And I might do just a class on that sometime. But it can tell you a lot about the soil characteristics. It tells you the parent soil, like I said, the water holding capacity, the depth to the water table, things like that. That would be good to know. So, okay. All right, erosion is just basically soil loss. All of our soil seems to end up in the Mississippi River, and it travels down to the Gulf of Mexico and ends up in the ocean. So you get a lot of sediment. Most of our streams around this area are compromised mainly due to sediment, and that's from runoff from development. And again, those smart growth things they're supposed to be doing to keep that soil in place, they're not doing. So there's different ways, that you can control that erosion. So wind can cause erosion. We're not gonna have a baby, are we?
So, no,
All right, catch.
I mean, that would be helpful, No,
Okay,
we're not gonna have a baby.
not tonight, not tonight.
No,
Oh, uh-oh.
no, we're good.
All right, I got 911. I got my phone in my pocket here. Oh, goodness. All right, preventing erosion, like we talked about, cover your soil. Just don't ever leave it bare. Put something down. If it's in the springtime, you can put different types of ground cover down. Put your vegetables in with your perennials and your wildflowers. Use the mulches. I don't like weed barrier fabric. And the reason I don't like weed barrier fabric is because I don't think that it allows the water to get through to the plant and get deep into the soil. I think it kind of inhibits that water. It makes more runoff. As if you got weed barrier and then you got mulch on top of that, that mulch gets real dry, and it's going to just repel it, and water's not going to go where you want it to go. Yes. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, it's okay.
What would you-
Probably, yeah. Yeah, unless you just want to plant stuff like radishes or spinach, collard greens, mustard greens, things like that would be easier to grow and incorporate into. What was that?
You cover it with that cardboard for the end?
Oh, yes, definitely. Yes, yes, but make sure you gotta watch the cardboard now too. They're using chemicals, if it's got a slicky surface to it, you don't want to use it. Same with newspaper, throw out the ads, but you can use newspaper, put layers down, and that will break down over time.
This is the ink, not
Hey,
the
I have a quick question if
Hold
there's
on,
time.
hold on, just 1 second. Okay, the ink is the problem in most of your, either on the cardboard or in the slicky newspapers. Okay, we used to worry about lead, but they don't put lead in ink anymore. But there are other chemicals called the forever chemicals, and that are found in cardboard. That's just coming to light now.
Wouldn't
So-
you say things in newspapers then?
I believe you can, yeah. That's what I'm saying. It depends on what type of ink. Like we used to, well, in the Leaf Chronicle, I used to get the Leaf Chronicle. I would use the non-slick pages because they use soy-based ink. And so I knew that was trustworthy. I just chuck the ads or clips, coupons, whatever. We used to be able to recycle them right down the road, but anyway, yes, those forever chemicals are being found in a lot of things. And didn't you say you were from Maine? Yeah, and so it is so much in the soil. They are you can't use like human waste, even if it's been composted. Should not use that on your farm fields. Should not use that on your farm
Why
fields.
not human waste?
Bacteria, fungal, parasites, same with dogs.
Like a cow can have the same thing. I've seen a bear dragging 50 feet of parasites. Not the time. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
you know, like if someone was like a vegan or vegetarian, they didn't even eat that stuff.
mhm.
They just eat plants.
But there's parasites on plants. Like, if you're raising sheep and goats, you have to treat them with something, whether it's herbal or synthetic type chemical medicine. You always have to treat them for worms because there's parasites on the plants that they're eating. So that's where they come from. And so if you had that manure in your garden and you're out there barefooted or, you know, you would definitely have to wear gloves and things like that. Not recommended. Not
But
recommended.
you said not human. So I'm
Not
just
human
like,
waste, not human or dog, animal, because because you can have parasites, you can have bacteria that will spread from person to person from putting it in the soil, from just you working in the garden. You get on your gloves, you do this, you know, and then you got dirt up your nose and it could have a bacteria in it. So yeah, human waste, dog waste, cat waste, no, no, don't even try to compost it. Because there's things in there that, Hmm? yes.
What's your opinion?
I wouldn't, personally, I wouldn't use it. I mean, it's,
My parents were just in an apple orchard. and
Yeah.
they went to money, and they just said, it's amazing. That's
Mhm.
what he uses.
yeah, well, it would be different using it in an apple orchard than it would be to using it in a garden. You're gonna have your hands and feet in your garden because you're always working out there. Or even if it's in a farmer's field, they're gonna get it on them, on their equipment, and so you can spread.
He's throwing broadcasting it everywhere. I just tell him to.
Yeah, put a mask on, put some gloves, there's PPE, personal protection equipment, so, yeah. So, I used to work for the highway department in Missouri when I was in school. And I hated going to Branson to do the flower beds because we had to use gray water and it was gross. You had to go down to the water plant and fill up your 300-gallon tank on the back of your truck with that nasty gray water. And then there are all these tourists driving by you while you're spraying water in the plants. Plants were beautiful, but
Gray water, just to be clear. is that
Mhm.
like the waste?
yeah, it was, yeah. It hadn't. Mhm. Yeah, it's the gray water before it's completely sanitized, chlorine put in it and all that. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what.
that is one, yes, yes, you are correct. But but like on a larger scale, like I was saying, this was from the water treatment plant. The gray water was not treated with any chemicals yet. You know, how your sewage water ends up being your drinking water and all that. So, that's what we were using. And we had special gloves and stuff that we wore when we went to Branson to do the plant beds. So if you ever go to Branson and look at flower beds, you'll know why they look so pretty now.
Now, in the permaculture field,
Mm-hmm,
they do use.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm,
What's the difference between permaculture and?
Mm.
Or,
sorry.
not others, but, huh? Carla, what's the difference between
You missed.
permaculture and horticulture?
Permaculture and horticulture. Permaculture is basically the practice of like regenerative agriculture. Everything that you grow or use on your farm is contained on your farm and reused. Like if you would have animals and you slaughtered the animals, you would use the bones, have them ground up into bone meal and use that back as nitrogen. I mean, some people are super serious about it. Everything goes back. It stays on the farm. You're not sending anything to the landfill. You're making something out of it. You're making something out of it. You make flowers. Kind of like the old days. I mean, it's really, you know, but that would be the difference. Horticulture is the art and science of plants, basically. So you think of landscaping and gardening and trees and things like that. So horticulture is kind of a field of study, whereas permaculture or regenerative is a practice of horticulture. Okay. And I'm sorry, who on Zoom had a question?
Yes.
Sorry.
So no, trust me, I completely understand. The website that you gave me, is that for the cover crops? Is that good for all organic, or is there another website for just organic stuff?
I would have to do research on getting organic seed.
Okay.
Uh,
No worries.
yeah, or else, yeah, I mean, you could just Google it,
Yeah.
honestly. That's what I would do, to find the organic seed sources. So, yeah.
And then I'll refer back to that other seed video of the guy talking about it. So
Okay.
So
All right.
list of like seeds that they're.
He did not send that to
Okay.
me. Okay, I gotta get on Steven. Yeah. It's been I know they're busy and I've been busy.
I have one more quick question. You're saying that some people use human waste in their gardens?
Yes, composted human waste, like the Milorganite is just
No.
one. Yeah, they use composted human waste from the treatment plant.
Like from a human, their waste that they
Yes.
eliminate.
Yes.
Is that what you say? Oh no, that is so gross. That is terrible.
It is.
I
Again,
cannot believe that. So
yeah.
they're not
Again,
using that in
another
our
lesson.
food, are they? Oh my gosh. I am not believing this.
I don't know, but weed, yes, they do use it on your fields. This could,
Oh my gosh.
yes, but it's supposed to be broken down, but you gotta remember,
Oh no.
that
I don't
the-
care what they say about
the
breaking
forever
them down.
chemicals don't break down, but you can break down the parasites, but like I said, it's gotta be a really intense composting process. Again, when I worked for the Missouri Highway Department and the treatment plant would take the solid part of the waste and they would make windrows out of it. So there'd be long piles basically of, and they would take their big machines and they would turn that and then they would sell it or use it in flower gardens and stuff like that. Because again, along with the gray water, when we planted the beds, we used what was available, which was that composted human waste. So I may have just a tad bit of a to that because
Oh gosh.
I worked in it for about a year. I was like, oh, I don't like this part of the job. So, okay. So tillage in the garden and landscaping, to till or not to till, one of the biggest questions people have. It may be something that you want to use. If you're first breaking ground, you may have to till. And then, like I used to say with my ex-husband, I'd let him in there to till and then it's like, nope, no more in the garden. You stay out. Because one time he went back in the garden and he tilled up a bunch of stuff that I had just planted and was just coming up. I knew what it was. He didn't. So I was like, no more in the garden. You till once and then my garden. So anyway, so there may not be an answer that fits all sites. And as we get older, it's harder to do these things without equipment. Again, I have back and neck problems. And so now the idea of double digging, that kills me by the end of the day. I mean, and it did last week, Thursday. I dug plants at my daughter's house and I was off work Friday, flat on my back. Couldn't do anything. So anyway. So to till or not to till, like I said, you may need to do it to break ground and then try to limit it or do limited tillage on your garden. So tillage practices, it does have some positives and it has some negatives. It incorporates the organic matter, helps to control weeds, aerates, or helps to break up that compaction. It does increase the warming of the beds. It makes like a fine seed bed. But once the soil is tilled over and over again, those little aggregates get smaller and smaller and you get more of that crusting and it breaks down the soil so much that it doesn't have good tilth. So, okay, it does quicken the organic matter breakdown. That can be a negative. It brings up weed seeds. breaks those soil aggregates up and reduces the large pores that you want. And closes in those channels where we've seen our water go through a while ago. So I don't think this one's animated, but it all comes back to the soil structure. So a low bulk density, lower weight, more pore space. This one has a higher bulk density, a heavier weight, and it has less pore space. So this would have had organic matter added to it. This is basically our clay soil, which begins with. But you can go from this to that with continual addition of the compost. Okay, so assessing our soil, we've kind of beat this one up. I'm gonna go. I just want to make sure that you all understand that when you're taking your soil samples, all right, you get a bucket and a shovel. Soil probes don't work in Tennessee. If you can get them in the ground, then you can't get the soil back out of it. So actually, we've got a neat tool now, something you might be interested in. It's a bucket and a drill, and it's got an auger that fits on it. And the bucket has a hole in it, and so you just hook it to your drill, and you go down 6 to 8 inches, and it pulls the soil right back up into the bucket. And so you just take that, and then you move to another area. And also, I forget what. I'll find the name brand.
You can get that on an infomercial at 2 a.m.
Probably. I got it from my good buddy Finest at TSU.
What's it called again?
Let me go. So try to show it on camera, but it's just a bucket, a hole in the bottom right here. And you take this and you attach it to your drill, and then you set it down on the ground, and the drill just goes down through this hole, and it pulls the soil up into it. So you put it in reverse and pull it back up, and it pulls that soil up with it. And so you can mark this. You know, if you're wanting an 8-inch depth, you might want to measure this and put some marks on it. 6 inches, 8 inches. It may be 12 inches long, but it makes life so much easier. I think this thing is just a thing to carry around the bucket with. I haven't quite figured that out. But we've done a lot of soil tests for farmers. The other 2 ag agents went and got one after I got one. So we have those available if you need help doing a soil test. But yeah, just make sure that you're kind of staggering around your property, collecting soil samples, because you want a good representative soil sample. Your soil sample is only the soil sample results are only as good as the soil you bring into us. So if you just take one sample and you don't even get hardly past the grass, very shallow soil sample, it will come up high in phosphorus, may come up high in potassium, because that potassium and phosphorus do not move readily through the soil like nitrogen does. Nitrogen leaches readily. So, but anyway, collect a
what
good
about
sample. Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry. What
No.
about those things that people use to dig a hole in the ground? I don't think you put a hole in the ground, they take it out, then you put a plant in the ground. What about
An
getting
auger?
dirt out? Yeah, what about using one of those to get some dirt out the ground?
Yeah, that will work. That's kind of like this thing. Can you see it?
Yes, I can see.
Okay, this hooks onto a drill. And so they have different sizes of these too. So it could be used for planting. If you need it, probably one a little bit bigger, or you could go down a couple different times. But it would be good to help loosen up the soil to plant too.
Okay.
Especially
just
with our
one of
trees.
those just to get the dirt to bring the sample in to you all.
Yeah,
Okay.
you would bring it to us, or I think I sent out the website for the soil lab. You could actually pay for it online and collect your soil, and you fill out the submission form, you can pay online, or you can come to us and do it a paper copy and we'll mail it off for you. But it would be $25. It's $15 to the lab and then at least $10 to ship it.
So you could dig at least 6 inches long.
6 to 8 inches. Yep. 'Cause like I said, anything any less of a depth, your results are going to be off because of the way those nutrients stay in the soil. They don't move readily. So
$25 times 5.
yes, but this way, what it's showing here, this is going to be one sample. You're gonna, yeah, you're gonna pick it up, put it all in the bucket, mix it together, and then we only need 2 cups worth to send it off to the lab. So
You're taking 10 soil samples, mixing them all together, and then send that one aggregated
Mhm.
sample
yes,
in.
yes, yes.
So that's not $250.
No. It's $25 and then, so this would be one sample, $25, and you get to put 4 crop codes. So like if you wanted to grow blueberries, a vegetable garden, you want to check out your lawn or shade trees, any of the 4, they're listed, there's crop codes on the sheet. So just about everything, we got corn, or soybeans. Yes. Mhm. If you have, yes, it's 10 acres or less per sample. And if you have a problem area, you probably would want to test that separately. That would be 2 tests. 10 acres for 1 sample. Yeah. And again, like you're looking at a farmer's field, he or she's gonna go out and go all around. Just random sampling and then send it off to the lab. And like I said, these soil sample. The tools that you use to the soil probe. Like I said, our soil is usually hard as a rock. It's hard to get down in the soil, and then you've got to take it out. And I mean, usually you have to take a metal stick or something to get the soil out of the probe because it goes up into the soil. I think it's easier just to use a spade and a bucket. Just make sure you're going down that 6 to 8 inches, and you don't want to put the grass or topsoil or that top grass root layer. You want it to be down further than that. But yeah, take those samples. I call them sub samples. Put them in the bucket, mix it up, and this needs to be updated because they do require 2 cups now. So. Okay, so your soil test report, you can kind of use the one I've given you as a guide. Get a button. Is that better? No. Okay, so some important information. Okay, the water pH and the buffer pH. The water pH is an estimate of your pH. And that is the estimate of the pH in the solution around the soil particles. So the level of plant nutrients in the soil sample is what you're looking for. What do you need to add to the soil to make that particular plant grow well? Right? So if you're, like I said, if you get 4 different codes, that you can put on there, whatever you're planting. So using the home and garden sheet, I think I mentioned this earlier, but the recommendations will come back in per 1,000 square feet, pounds or ounces per 1,000 square foot or per 100-foot row, things like that. So if you get the wrong form and they send it back to you in acreage, we can calculate that out. So, in many soils in Tennessee, it's common to need to increase the pH of the soil. We tend to have an alkaline soil because we have a limestone base as our parent material. Of course, we have a karst topography across Tennessee with all the caves and the streams underground and things like that. So that makes the soil more alkaline. So in this example here, it's not requiring any limestone. But on the vegetable garden, it's recommending 25 pounds, 612 per 1,000 square foot. And then it gives you the exact times to put those chemicals on there, or put the fertilizer on there. Now, like I said, this is a duster. This would be something like if you were doing row cropping or cropping on large acreage, you can always go to co-op or somewhere like that and have them put out your lime and your fertilizer for you at a cost. So, okay. All right, so this is basically. I would check the same thing when I go back. Okay, so fertilizer labels, there is a fertilizer law. The plant, or we call it plant food, the fertilizer has to have the amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium listed on the bag. So like a 3300 would just have nitrogen in it. If you had a 0150, then that's just going to have phosphorus in it. 0010 would just have potassium. Okay, so a complete fertilizer has nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and it has the micronutrients in it also. Okay, so the types of fertilizers, you're going to have some that are industrially mined and mixed or blended or purified. Salts, fertilizers have a lot of salts in them. And that's why you do not want to fertilize during the middle of the summer when it's dry, or if you're not irrigating, don't fertilize, June, July, or late June, July, August, September. No fertilizer. Do it in the spring and in the fall. This is the best time to do it. But if you're irrigating, you have an irrigation system, then you could fertilize a little bit more often because water is being supplied to that plant. So. You probably should, because your nitrogen is going to be leaching out of the soil. So yeah, and a lot of your fertilizers are coated, and that's so they're slow release, and it will tell you on the bag approximately how long that fertilizer takes to break down. So some break down very quickly, like 30 days, but you might get one in 60, 90 days, and get on a regular schedule like that.
Can you say like complete fertilizer?
Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. In NPK. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And potassium nitrate is what KNO3 means. Basically, it is the inorganic form of potassium, and it is readily available to the plant. There are some forms that have to break down, through watering, basically. Water, heaving of the soil, and such like that will help it to break down. You can also use it for stump removal to make it break down a little faster. But it's an ionic salt of potassium is basically what it is. Potassium nitrate. And okay, the organic fertilizers definition, previously living things. It's kind of like our composting. It comes from natural organisms. No, well, I mean, if you have bone meal, then it's going to be dried up, ground up bone. So your organic fertilizers would be your compost, your manure, blood meal, stuff like that. It should be labeled as a fertilizer. It will speed up and make the availability of the nutrients in the soil. Well, it will make the nutrients in the soil more available to the plant. And it can be in an organic matter. So the legal definition by USDA of organic is the organic fertilizer is that which comes from a living thing that contains nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, or potash. USDA does not regulate organic labels on farm supplies like fertilizers. So there's a gray area there when you see things that are USDA organic certified. Are we going home? Oh, goodness. So, but yeah, that's if you're USDA certified organic, there are some gray areas when you're buying seed or when you're adding compost, and trying to, if you cannot find organic seed, you have to try like 3 or 5 places. And then if you can't find the organic seed, the variety that you want, then you can buy the conventional seed. So same with the fertilizers and things like that. If you can't find it, then they have a gray area where they get away with it.
You
So,
can still label it as
and
organic.
they'll still label it USDA organic certified.
Then it would be like the size of it. It's a shoe.
It's a, yeah.
Cause it really doesn't have to be.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's very hard to garden organically. It really is. I mean, I do in my garden, but like I said, it's on a smaller scale. Things on a larger scale, and like with fruit trees or orchards and things like that, you just can't hardly grow organic fruit in Tennessee. We just have a multitude of fungi and our weather patterns, just cause a lot of disease and things in the fruits, but we'll talk about that.
Well,
Yeah, pawpaws do, yeah. This must have been a good year for them. I've seen a
It
lot of people
was.
posting on Facebook. I was like, darn, I need to go get some.
if you want some seeds or some young trees, because I've got about 30 I need to dig out of a flower bed right now.
Okay, yeah, I'll take some trees.
That's a fruit, right?
Yeah, pawpaw.
Never mind.
Okay, it's
Bizarre.
we always call it an Ozark banana because it kind of smells like a banana, kind of a taste between a banana and a kiwi, maybe a little tart.
Isn't it like,
It's got to be really ripe before it's good.
It's like the consistency of custard
Yeah,
on the inside.
Yeah.
Like a thick
a
custard.
very thick custard
But,
and big O
yeah.
seeds. I mean, the seeds are big, so you got to scoop out the seeds and then you scoop out the inside and you can make different things out of it. Or you can eat it just raw. I mean, I remember as kids, we just, find them in the woods and, if they're really green and smushy, then they were ready to eat. It's kind of like a persimmon. You don't want to eat it while it's green. You don't want to eat it. That's a lesson you learn once and you remember it forever. Did you have a question? No, okay, okay. But yeah, okay, so, all right. We get the organic. The formulations of fertilizer, they can be a granular, it can be blended, homogenized. They can be coated, to be that slow release. You can have it in a liquid, like your Miracle-Gro type products, water soluble liquids that you mix, just mix with water. Granulars usually last longer. It takes them longer to break down, especially if they've got the coating. So, so I like to, at establishment, I might put down a 10, 10, 10, 10, a 10, 10, 10. But as I go through the season, I may switch off to a Miracle-Gro like product that's water soluble, and I can just spray, give them a good foliage feed, and do that in between times. Oh, this is a slide I hate. Is anybody a math teacher? Okay, so we need to do some math. You get your soil test results back and you're not quite sure how you get, let's say, 2 pounds of nitrogen, actual nitrogen active in your soil. So soil test says apply 2 pounds nitrogen per 1,000 square foot. You have 3,000 square foot garden and are using a 10-10 fertilizer product. How much fertilizer should be applied?
not 6 pounds?
You know.
Because it's 10 to 10, so you have to break that.
You gotta break it down. Yeah, I got the answer. So, I always keep these little formulas on a cheat sheet next to my office. So, all right, the 10-10-10 complete fertilizer contains 10% or 0.1 nitrogen per pound of product applied to 1,000 square feet. So you divide 2 pounds by 0.1, and that would equal 20 pounds of fertilizer required to provide 2 pounds of actual nitrogen per 1,000 square foot. So then you take that number, for a 3,000 square foot garden, you're going to multiply that 20 by 3. And so your total amount that you need is 60 pounds of 10-10-10 fertilizer to cover the whole garden. Okay, it gets a little more difficult. I mean, you're still using the same formula, but if you're using, like a 5-10-5 or a 15-15-15, you're still gonna put it in a formula to figure out exactly how much you need to add. But this is the basic ratios that you go through. And I'm terrible at math, and ever since they came out with the little calculators online, I just plug it into a calculator and I cheat. So the ways that you incorporate fertilizers, you can broadcast, which is just spreading the fertilizer out evenly over the area that has maybe been tilled up, ready for planting. Banding, you place the fertilizer, you may dig a shallow row. Banding and side dressing, I never really understood the difference. I guess it's just the size of the plants, really. So banding, you're going to put the fertilizer about 2 to 4 inches away from the young plants, but not touching it because it does have nitrogen in it and it can burn. Side dressing, the fertilizer is also placed alongside growing crops and then raked into the soil and then watered in. So again, what I consider side dressing is like when my corn is about 1 foot tall, I go along and I gently would take a hoe and I would put the fertilizer that's recommended and then I just cover it back up and water it in. Okay. So that's what I consider a side dressing. So, but you can do the same thing with composting also. I think the banding is just referring to young plants and seeds, but not touching it.
Yeah, when, visiting Kathy last week,
Katie?
Katie, when, you put the fertilizer around the width of the tree.
Yeah, at the drip line or the edge of the canopy.
Right.
Way out here.
Can you apply the same thing to any plant or like tomato plant instead of putting it right there on the root?
Yeah, you put it kind of around. Yeah.
I thought it was just
You don't want to put it in the hole, especially if it's a high nitrogen fertilizer. And that goes for any plant because it'll burn the roots. So if you're just putting, bone meal. You can put a mycorrhiza in, which is an inoculant for legumes, make them grow better. A lot of times they come inoculated, so you don't have to. Or if you've got a good soil, your soil should have good mycorrhiza content. And we're going to go over that definition here in just a minute. Okay, your biological properties of the soil. Of course, we have water, we have airspace, sand, silt, clay, and then this fungal hyphae is what we call the mycorrhiza. It's a fungal hyphae. And in a natural forest area, each tree has its own mycorrhiza. And it helps take up the nutrients in the water and it feeds the tree. And it allows it to spread out and help feed the other trees also. You guys need to read the book. It's called The Secret Life of Trees. It's a really good book, but it talks about that interaction. So they're intertwined. And if you see a tree in the forest and there's a group of trees, they're all supporting each other. And so when a developer comes through, knocks down all the trees and leaves one here, one there, you just took down its whole support system. So the roots are not intertwined anymore. And they're not helping each other because a healthy tree will take its nutrients and the sick tree sends off signals. It's kind of like hormones and it signals that it's, hey, I'm sick over here. And so the other trees actually get their nutrients over there to sugar and water and such. So it's amazing. You got to read that book. So, but that is what the mycorrhiza does. It's just a fungus that helps plants to grow. So it's a good fungus. So bacteria, a teaspoon of soil contains 100 million to 100,000. I don't know. A lot of bacteria in the soil. It can function as a decomposer. Some of them are mutualistic, which means they're helping each other, like our mycorrhiza we talked about between the trees. Some can be pathogens, which cause disease, and these chemotrophs. Now, chemoautotroph is an organism that takes organic chemicals and transforms it into energy. And the chemotrophs include the bacteria, and are often in the main or primary producers in an ecosystem. So animals that eat primary producers are called primary consumers. So we could apply this to the gardening world and to the wildlife world too. So, but there is going to be bacteria in your soil. Some of it can be good, some of it can be bad. Our clovers, they have nodules. If you look at the roots on your clover, that is nitrogen fixing nodules. And that's why we like to grow clover, because it fixes its own nitrogen in the soil so that you don't have to add so much to it. So it fixates the bacteria, it's nitrifying bacteria and denitrifying the bacteria. And let's look at the closer picture. So it's most plentiful in the area close to the roots of the plant. That's where you get that mutualistic action going on. But we call it, this area is called the rhizosphere, the area close to the root system. And basically the biology and the chemistry of the soil are influenced by the root and by that fungal organism or bacterial organism there. So again, we got good and we got bad. Supporting the good bacteria, incorporating your fresh organic matter, more common in agriculture systems versus forest. A lot of our soils are just dead soil. If they're over-tilled, if it's a new development, you're dealing with dead soil. You've got to add the organic matter with the fungi and the bacterial and other little microorganisms back into it to make it alive again, basically. So fungi, largest in total biomass, it will be, you can see it below the soil, above the soil. I had some questions earlier this week about mushrooms popping up because of the rain. Well, those mushroom spores have just been kind of dormant down there, waiting for the right conditions for them to grow. They're fungi. They need water. So, but don't eat them till you know what they are. And I don't identify mushrooms. I said, you only want a chance to really find out if it's deadly or not. So, this is a parasitic, this is southern blight. And we had it on tomatoes and peppers this year. This is kind of a poor year for tomato and pepper production in a lot of gardens. So once you get this, it's called sclerotia. These little things right here are the sclerotia, and then it grows into this white fungal mass. Now, you don't always see that fungal mass with the naked eye, but if a person thinks they've got southern blight, I have them pull up the whole thing. Bring me plants, roots, everything, because I've got to go in and start dissecting, and then I might put it under the microscope to see if I can identify the organism. Yes, I'm a plant geek. So, but if you see this, it's not just tomatoes and peppers. It can get on any garden vegetable, it can get on landscape plants, and it's just called southern blight. And once it's in your soil, you cannot put a susceptible plant back in that spot for at least 3 years. And for like on the garden side, what they recommend is deep tillage, cover cropping, planting plants that are not susceptible, like corn would not be susceptible to southern blight, but tomatoes, beans even get it. So we just have to do a little research on what you could plant instead in those areas. And then as far no,
Okay, I'll have one. As far as rotating your crops, then
Yeah.
if you're rotating, you can rotate the tomatoes back there for
3 years at
yeah,
least.
3 years.
And you're gonna be like, even in your containers, if you had this, it's not gonna stay in that one spot, it's gonna move with the water. Yeah, so that's why you may want to do 2 raised beds so that you could at least rotate your crops from different families, 2 or 3 smaller beds maybe.
Now,
So-
could that come up? I'm sorry, the surface where it looks like dog vomit.
No, that's a different one. It's
That's
actually
different.
called dog vomit fungus.
Yeah.
It looks like somebody puked on the mulch. Yeah.
Yellow.
Yeah. It's nasty.
Okay.
Usually happens after a hard rain. You see it on the mulch. It's just a process of decomposition. It's not a
Okay.
fungi you want to eat.
No.
Okay. Oh, it ruins the whole plant. If you let it go, I mean, the only treatment is to remove it from the garden and not plant suckable plants there in that spot for at least 3 years. And then you have to do some deep tillage, cover cropping, things like that to get it basically out of the soil. If you're a large tomato or pepper grower, you're in trouble if you see this in your fields. So. Okay. And then here's just a close-up microscopic view of that mycorrhizal fungi. This is the one that has a symbiotic relationship, which means it's helping, it's getting on the roots and it's helping other plants. So they work in a symbiotic relationship. They help each other to grow, basically. So that's the microscopic view. All right. Arthropods, very good for the garden. You may get scared and scream if you see one. That they are shredders, millipedes, centipedes, even spiders, root feeders, fungal feeders, springtails will be fungal. They do good in the soil. I mean, you may not like it when you come across them. We came across one the other day that we never did figure it out. We have to look back at the picture, but it looked like a millipede, but it wasn't. It didn't have all those little legs all the way down. It had the legs up front. Because I was trying to show it to my granddaughter and we are trying to keep it flipped over and count the legs. And I was like, this is not a millipede. Don't have enough legs. So I'm going to have to go back and ID that picture and look over that. So, but all these arthropods, microorganisms are good. They help to break down the soil, decomposers. As we said, they shred the organic matter, they mineralize nutrients. This means they break them down. They feed and stimulate the microbes, enhance aggregation, they burrow, and they help to control some pests. Earthworms, we do have the hammerhead and the crazy Asian jumping worms. They just said that they're here. There's no real way to control them without killing off more of our native worms. But if you do find them, the Department of Agriculture says put them in a bag and burn them, send them to the landfill, but package them up real good so they don't get out. And don't fish with them because every time you break a worm into a little piece, okay, that develops into another worm. So that's one way that they're dividing and conquering is people fishing with them, or they'll throw them out in the lake, things like that. So watch your worms.
What is?
They eat the earthworms and the good microorganisms in your soil. That's why they're so bad. So I know when we do Plant the Campus Red at Austin Peay, we usually find some green jumping ones. I don't know if they've taken on some of the color from the mulch or what, but yeah, one year we were kind of having fun. Okay, so kind of getting to a summary here. To support the diversity in the soil, you want to use that organic matter. You want a range of food sources. I guess that means food sources for the plants. Look at your tillage decisions. Are you going to till or not? Or how often do you till? The least amount of tillage is best. Water, air relationships, and soil compaction. You want you want that water and air to be in the soil. It's hard to believe that soil needs air, but it does need some air along with the water. Okay. Stewardship impacts your vegetable garden. Yeah, don't we all wish we had a soil like that? Yeah, but that's been a lot of years of organic, probably manure cropping it and adding organic matter, or maybe they started out with a good soil. But yeah, that soil has good till. So using cover crops, manures and compost, crop residues, tillage, mulches, and balanced nutrient management. It's better to invest in that soil test so that you're not over fertilizing, because fertilizers are not coming down in price any. They're pretty hefty. You don't normally think about that on a homeowner level, but our farmers are thinking about that. The price of nitrogen shot through the roof. So, you know, that makes all of our food costs go up and things like that. So, if you're homesteading, gardening for your own, you know, use all these methods that you can. Soil stewardship. You need to watch your bed preparation, mulching, organic matter management, irrigation practices, fertilization tactics. And next week, I'm gonna be going over herbaceous ornamentals, but we go through a lot of that stuff again. So soil stewardship is gonna impact your home orchard, and we will have an orchard 101, I believe. I don't remember when it's scheduled, but site selection, site preparation, cover cropping between your trees that you're planting, ripping the soil if you need to break up a hard pan. Just remember that your home orchard, I mean, that is a permanent crop. I mean, and so you want to do your soil testing, get that pH in the right range. But orchards don't have to be on really fertile ground. They like to be a little bit hungry and they produce more fruit. But yeah, using cover crops and all that good stuff. Oops. So soil stewardship is going to impact your fishing, or those of us that are creek stompers, you know, river rats, whatever you want to call them. But if you put too much fertilizer on, it's going to run off. It's going to get in the groundwater. It's going to end up in your creek, and it can cause different types of algae to grow. If you have ponds on your property and you're doing a heavy nitrogen fertilization and then it rains and it goes into your pond, you're going to have a lot of algae growth and weeds in the pond too. So you only need to put on what's recommended in the soil test and not any extra. So yeah, but sediments are one of the main problems around here anyway. So we want you to use what we've talked about today on your own garden so that you have good sustainable landscapes, good soil. Apply what the soil needs for the plant that you're growing. Sometimes it's hard if you've got you know, a 7.5 pH and you're wanting to grow blueberries. It's going to take about 3 years of adding a lot of urea and sulfur to get that down. So it might not be feasible to plant blueberries on that site and have to put that much work into it. So you might want to test in a different area where it is more acidic and go with that area and then plant something else in the other area. That makes sense? Okay. All right. I think that's it. All right.
How long does it take?
Usually a week to 2 weeks. Especially if you can bring it in dry and we get it shipped, get it to the post office pretty quick. It takes about a week, maybe 2 weeks.
I got a question.
Okay. Okay, yes.
I planted some cover crops, included clover. The
Mhm.
clover, white crusty stuff I've never seen before. Could that be the southern blight you just mentioned?
I'm not sure. Did you get any pictures of it?
No, I just saw it tonight. It's the first time I've seen it. Can I send it to you tomorrow?
Yeah, send me some pictures of it and we'll take a look at it.
There's
How
another,
big are the cover crops?
this is clover. It just started coming
Oh,
up.
just in the clover. It may just be powdery mildew. It may be
It's
just
not
a
powdery
fungal.
mildew. I know that what that is. This is really hard and
Yeah, powdery
crusty.
mildew or downy mildew. That's another thing that comes in with the rains from the hurricanes and such. Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay, I'll send it to you tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, send me some pictures. I'll look at it. And we will see you next week. And like I said, I'll be teaching. So I can't. I'm a master. Okay. See y'all next Tuesday.
Okay, bye.